Well, hello and welcome, guys, everyone. We're really excited to have our first official podcast. Last week we did a live stream, and I think that went really well. Hi, I'm Christopher, and this is Courtney.
Hello.
This is the Scribe and Scribble podcast. She's Scribe.
And he's Scribble. No relation.
Not until we got married, anyway. So yeah, I'm a storyboard artist, and she's a screenwriter, and we both do a little bit of drawing and writing as well, opposite. But we have a lot of thoughts on all sorts of stories and media and everything else. And last week we talked about Jane Austen, and
Part of virtual Jane Con by Drunk Austin. So much fun.
yeah, and we were looking at adaptations because our expertise is in film and visual storytelling. So
Well said.
And I'm specifically doing that with, what I do for work, and Courtney does a lot of the writing, and we both love the jokes. But yeah, today we're going to be talking about Onward because it's now available on Disney Plus.
We, back in the before time, got to go see Onward as a special preview, but we're going to watch it again, and we're going to talk to you about everything we can possibly think about it.
Yeah, I mean, and we're especially excited to do it with you all because, that's the point here. We want to kind of do this together, and we'll probably be doing all sorts of media stuff in the future. Don't worry, for those of you who are all about the Jane Austen stuff, we're going to do some more of that soon. We're also just excited to do a bunch of live streams as well because we got to all do this together, like we want to watch it with all of you. So
yes, and you guys are so much fun.
yeah, we were so overwhelmed and excited by all of the feedback and the interaction we got on the live stream we did, and that was really exciting. And we want to keep that ball rolling, keep the community going, because that's what we're all about. So,
but since Onward came out yesterday, we really wanted to jump on that opportunity to get into the conversation early about what it's like to watch Onward at home.
Yeah, and so I think that's about all we're going to do for this little intro. What we're going to do is we're having this little intro now, and then what we're going to do, we're going to go watch the movie. Hopefully you guys will too. We'll pause, and then we'll come back and discuss. Hopefully you'll have seen it because we will get into spoilers. However, we'll also try to have we'll tell you exactly when we're going to start talking about spoilers in case some of you are just listening to this on the go and haven't had a chance to watch it yet, or just don't have access for some reason.
Yeah, we want to let you know what we loved about it, what to look for, and so if you haven't seen it, we'll let you know when to stop watching and to go watch it, and then come back and listen to what else we have to say.
Isn't there a way to rent it as well? I think...
I do think so. Yeah, they'd been renting it for a little bit, but we have Disney Plus, so we were just holding out on them.
Yeah, I think normally it'd be in the theater still right now. But since it's not, there's a way to rent it. I'm sure Disney's going to give you plenty of ways to look it up. But yeah, we're really excited to watch it with you all, and we're going to come back and tell you how we liked it. We'll be right back.
And we're back.
Yeah, so that was really fun. I think this is in I think there are a few categories of Pixar movies, and I think, well, actually this one sort of hits two. Because there are some that are kind of pretty emotional, and then there are some that are the super, just really fun ones. Like Monsters University makes me think of that, or Monsters Inc. also are both the kind of, that's a romp,
And then there's A Bug's Life.
But then you've got some that are a little bit more heavy on the emotional side, and I think Inside Out's really fun, but it's definitely one of the more emotional ones, and I've heard a lot of people say they're crying at that one. And then you've got
Up.
Coco.
Coco. Oof. Yeah, it's a good movie, but clear out those tear ducts and whatnot.
So, and I think this one is sort of a combo of both, because this one has it's a roller coaster, a little bit of emotions, because it's really fun and it's really, really sad sometimes. It's really nostalgic. For Courtney and me personally, it hits on some things, just family relationships, and we've both lost our dads. So there's a bunch of stuff in this that we can really relate to. And we've got siblings too.
We have brothers.
Yeah. Not the same brothers, but man, this is a pretty movie. It's oh, let me just say, by the way, we're going to get into spoilers, but we're not going to get into them right away, so that people who haven't seen it yet, because we know some people haven't had access yet or whatever, maybe you're going to listen to this first. And I think I mentioned this in the intro segment too. But we'll let you know when we're going to get into spoilers, because we'll do a deep dive after, a certain point.
Which is why we're not doing this live, because I would be mortified to spoil something by accident, and this way we can edit out anything to put it later.
Yeah, but please tell us what you guys thought too, because we really want to have like a conversation about this. I think this movie's really fun. I've heard some people just love this movie. Like, some people are saying it's their favorite Pixar, and other people are just, they're so emotional by it. And this is our second time watching it, and I think I got more emotional this time watching it. Of course, my sister was here today, so and I've had a little bit of a, almost like a father relationship with her in some ways, and so.
Yeah, that would be good to talk about, and we'll probably have to wait till the spoiler part to really get into that, because it'll be hard to talk about it. But I have a big brother. Christopher is a big brother, and so this movie explores the relationship between two brothers, and it's really good. The premise of the film is that it's a world that had magic in it, and that as technology has advanced and people have always kind of sought the easier way to do things, technology just very naturally replaces that magic. And so it's got this fantasy character design, and like their house is a mushroom house.
Yeah, I love the house. It's
they're
so
in
cool.
They're in New Mushroomville or Mushroomton.
Yeah, and there's this one shot where they're looking out the window of the house near the beginning of the movie, and like you see all the other houses, and it's like a bunch of mushrooms in a valley, and it's just, I love it. It's so cool looking. It's just delightful. The design in this movie is beautiful. There's like texture on everything, and like there's so many wooden doors with like intricate design work on them. I think it's just obviously a throwback to fantasy.
Yeah, you can really feel the splinters when you're looking at the texture.
Yeah, don't rub your face on this movie. You'll get scraped.
You'll catch something.
But yeah, tell us some of the backstory about, or like who made this movie and stuff like that. We've got, obviously it's Pixar, we know that, it's a Disney owns Pixar now. I think everybody's pretty overall aware of that at this point.
At this point, we're about a few steps away from Disney owning our podcast, because they're just snatching up every media thing they can find.
Yeah, just in time for this pandemic, right?
So we've been following Onward since 2017, when the director Dan Scanlon tweeted a reply to Connor Creates on Twitter. "You working on any movies right now?" And he replied on July 9th, 2017, "Just one." After that, we didn't hear anything about it until D23, which is Disney's every other year big conference, kind of their own Comic-Con of sorts, where they announce...
The Disney Club.
Yes.
I mean, I guess, I don't know. I don't know that much about it, but it feels pretty exclusive. If you're a part of it, you know things.
And you want to know things. But so you can join the club, and it's a yearly membership, but the event itself is only once every other year. And so they announced an untitled suburban fantasy. That was after, so in the lineup we had Coco, Toy Story 4, and Incredibles 2, and it was like, okay, Coco sounds cool. Then we've got a couple of sequels. What's going on with Pixar? And so I was very intrigued by a fantasy thing. There was a film called Gigantic that was canceled, and that's probably not a good time to talk about on this.
So disappointed.
But maybe one day we can look into...
That was going to be Jack and the Beanstalk, and it looked really cool just from the promo art. It sounded exciting. Maybe we can do a podcast on like canceled projects that sounded awesome.
Absolutely what I want to do.
Because there are a few, and that's the kind of thing too where we'll be able to, on our social media like Twitter, follow us on at Scribe and Scrib with 2 B's. Maybe we can show you some of the stuff, because there are some really cool animated movies that never got made that have animation tests and like amazing like artwork and visual development stuff, and man, did they look cool. And this is nothing new. I mean, if you go back to Disney in like the 70s, they had this huge project that they worked on for years, probably almost 2 decades, called about Chanticleer, the story of the rooster. And that design for that character ended up being the design of the singing rooster in Disney's Robin Hood, because unfortunately that's about all that remained. I mean, except for all the archives of artwork that they made about it. But as Courtney mentioned, Dan Scanlon is the director of this movie, and he did Monsters University. We've got a few. He helped write on this movie. We've got a couple other people who have had their hands in other Pixar things, who worked on the writing team as well. Yeah, so he did the screenplay for Monsters University, and he's been the director of Monsters University and Onward. A couple of other things that are less well known, but that's been his. I mean, he's been with Pixar, I think, for at least a decade. I think
at least all the way back to Cars, which premiered in
2 decades,
2006. It seemed like maybe his entry into additional screenplay material.
And of course, Courtney can tell you about the principal actors too. We've got Chris Pratt and Tom Holland
playing the brothers. Chris Pratt is Barley Lightfoot, and to echo a favorite quote of mine, would Chris Pratt again?
Yeah, I mean, Chris Pratt in this movie is, I was gonna say he's in rare form, but he's kind of always this way. He's like, you know, the fan that you want, the wish that you wish you had, and he kind of is like Ian's biggest fan in this movie, and I just love that. Ian's like this poor guy who's you know, probably in freshman year of high school, and
he's a sophomore. He's 16.
Oh, is he a sophomore? Okay, I wasn't sure. I thought maybe he just turned 16 and it was like second half of his freshman year or something.
Yeah,
but Ian's very, you know, nervous, and I think fear is a big thing for him. Fear is clearly a theme in this movie, and he, you know, among many, I think there's a bigger theme of trust, but fear is what he's driven by. And meanwhile, you've got Chris Pratt's character Barley, who's just this perpetually positive friend, and he's just like rooting for Ian at every turn. And he's showing up, like he's always there. You know, he kind of feels like that, you know, dad or mom who's always on the sideline at the soccer games, every single one, and they're always cheering, and they're always super pumped, even when you've lost and it's raining.
And you sat on the bench the whole game.
Right, they're still so proud, and oh man, that's what Barley is this whole movie. It's just like, I was just sitting there thinking of it, I was like, man, I wish I had that kind of brother following me around, cheering me on. And I mean, I'm sure he gets annoying, and we definitely see some of that with Ian, but what a guy, you know?
Yeah, and Tom Holland as Ian, I've seen a lot of complaints online about the character design. They've called him Linguini from Ratatouille, another Pixar film. And they thought that he looked a lot like his character from Spies in Disguise, which we've also seen, that came out December.
Which I can tell you the connection there is that they're basing the character design off of the actor.
Yeah, it's not the character's fault that Tom Holland looks like that.
Yeah, I mean, this goes back to, you know, this is character design roots. You know, even when they're designing a cat character or something like that, Aristocats or something, they're going to try to base it a little bit off of the person who's playing it, because there's some of that look in the voice too, I think, a little bit.
Yeah, it's like when you imagine what we look like.
Oh gosh. That never goes well. If you imagine people you haven't seen before, like some of you probably know what we look like because you either follow us somewhere or you saw the live stream. But almost always when I imagine what I think podcast people, hosts look like, or radio hosts, am I shocked when I see what they really look like. But that's a side topic.
Yeah, but going back to character design, wasn't there a design that was based on Walt Disney, like a caricature of him that became a design?
She's talking about my favorite movie, The Sword and the Stone, where I think it was Bill Peet, who was a storyboard artist who had a little bit of a love-hate relationship with Walt Disney, who decided to caricature him as Merlin from The Sword and the Stone, and gave him that kind of bell-shaped nose, and he's got a mustache in his beard, and of course Walt Disney had a mustache around that time. This is in the 60s when Walt was older, and it's really funny because, like, I think, well, so Walt was really focused on the parks at the time, from what I've read, and Bill Peet was their chief story artist. He basically did all of the storyboards for every movie for like 3 or 4 decades around that time. There were other guys. There were definitely other guys, but back then storyboards were fewer than they are now. Now you're practically animating it, especially if you're on TV. Basically, they were trying to come up with this design for Merlin. Bill Peet did this design of Merlin that was based off of Walt Disney slightly, and I think he might have been poking fun a little bit. And Walt came in and he was like, "That one, I like that one." And then that was Merlin. And so you never know what kind of Easter eggs are gonna stick.
Yes.
Well, and I think the Chris Pratt character looks a bit like Chris Pratt too. He's a little bit chunkier than Chris Pratt because Chris Pratt has become a superhero, but of course they both are. They're superhero brothers at this point.
Yes. I'm definitely a longtime Spider-Man fan, but I do love Guardians of the Galaxy, so I will not pick favorite brothers.
Yeah. So, is there anyone else we should point out on the cast or the?
Julia Louis-Dreyfus, great as Laurel, their mother.
Oh, she's great.
Oh,
she's
man.
a great character.
I love when they make moms heroes by just being themselves. I don't want to go into spoilers, but
She's so heroic.
she's just keeping the family together, keeping track of her 2 sons. It's a lot to admire even from the very start. And what kind of woman has a pet dragon? So you gotta respect that.
She's so relatable. I mean, she's really like every day. She feels like a mom, but she's also like really cool and interesting, and she's got a great arc in this movie, and she's so sweet and so supportive. And man, she does not back down from anything. She's just like, okay, my boys are going on a quest. I'm going on a quest, you know?
Yeah, and you can't have a quest without Octavia Spencer as the Manticore. And that's definitely going to get into spoilers to talk too much about what she does, but her voice acting and man, is great characters.
Oh, I love her character too. She's so good. And yeah, we'll have to talk more on them later. I wish we could say more now before the spoiler tag because they're so great. Because I want to elaborate because they are their own separate movie pretty much. So yeah, they're just fantastic. We'll get more on that later.
Yeah.
Any other like movie things, world things, stuff like that, or even background stuff that we can talk about that is not getting into spoilers? We'll definitely get to the spoilers soon. The music is one of the things that doesn't stand out to me as much because I was so focused on the visuals, I think. Obviously, that's what I focus on in general. It's hard for me to remember much of the music.
The composers for Onward are Jeff Dana and Michael Dana, and they've done, Jeff has 75 composer credits on IMDb, including most recently The Addams Family, which I really enjoyed. Christopher didn't get to see, so maybe we'll watch that one when we can track it down.
That one came out last year in 2019.
Storks! That is an absolute favorite.
Oh, yeah.
I love Storks.
That has good music, too.
It does. A Good Dinosaur. So many things. I'm trying to only highlight some of the ones that are relevant to Pixar interests.
Well, another thing about how many pieces he's written. A lot. Yeah, so those are the people behind the music. Any other points on the...
We've got
the
500 Days of...
Michael?
Yeah, so Michael did 500 Days of Summer. He did Life of Pi.
That's some big ones there. Moneyball.
Surf's Up. Oh, yeah, Moneyball. Little Miss Sunshine.
Oh, I like the music in Surf's Up, too.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have seen Surf's Up. That's it's probably like 20 years old now. It was like a documentary-style comedy with penguins who surf. And Shia LaBeouf was the star.
Shia LaBeouf.
You know, so some other things I noticed about the visuals is like there's a lot of references to other visual things that did fantasy. So there's a lot of vistas, big views. But then you've got this marriage of it's almost like a Japanese film where it's like the old meets new, the technology meets the nature, and you've got these skylines over these vistas. They're clearly just trying to show you it's like this is a fantasy world, it's a big, fantastic world, but there's all this like modern technology. I mean, these guys are walking around with cell phones and smartwatches, and they're going through dungeons and stuff. So it's pretty funny to see that together. You have any thoughts about the visuals?
I really loved the van that Barley drives. I really don't see a lot of fantasy painted vans in my daily life, but I could use a few more after this film.
Guinevere, I believe is her name.
Yes, Guinevere. Here's what Pixar's website says. Guinevere is more than just a van. She's Barley's mighty steed.
There's also a lot of the creatures in this movie are really cool. There's like, the main characters I think are elves. We've got, their pet dragon who's like a pet dog. You've got these unicorns eating out of the garbage in their front yard, and you've got a dragon cat clock on the wall. You know those cat clocks that have like the eyes that move back and forth while it ticks and the tail moves back and forth? It looks like that, but it's a dragon.
Yeah, keep an eye out for that in the kitchen next time you're watching.
Yeah. And I love too that like they're in this fantasy world, and then you've got Barley literally playing like basically Magic the Gathering on the kitchen table, or the dining room table or something. And that's a really pretty house, too. I think their house is super pretty on the inside. It's like a really nice, everyday house.
Production designer Noah Classic has this quote here where they kind of came up with a ratio for how much familiar and how much fantasy. So they ended up with a 70-30, 70% familiar and 30% fantasy, which doesn't work in every situation. And sometimes the characters would tip the scale, he said. So, like, just having two blue-eared brothers is going to make it feel more fantasy than you might want. If you put them out in a field, like, well, it could be totally fantasy because it's just a field. Fields look the same, maybe different crops in them, but I wouldn't know.
Well, and I love all the trolls that are basically, these big troll characters with giant noses and stuff like that are like selling things at, kiosks and things. It always looks like
the toll bridge troll. I love that.
Yeah, you've got that.
Just a little throwaway gag.
Yeah, and there seem to be a lot of them in shops and stuff like that. And then, randomly there'll be a fawn. Their mom's boyfriend is a centaur.
Centaur. So I was wondering, is a centaur an insect? He's got 6 legs.
Gross. I'm glad he doesn't have wings.
Ooh.
And they nailed that character too with the kind of, he's nice, but he's got that like slightly uncomfortable, like campy feeling of it's like your mom's boyfriend, it's like this is awkward. And you're making awkward jokes that aren't that funny.
Speaking of which, here's an awkward joke. Make sure he doesn't drink any Red Bull. Then he'd definitely be an insect.
Oh, also the mom is working out at the beginning of the movie, and she's doing, I think they called it C96, which I think is a reference to P90X, which a lot of our friends were into in college. I don't know if you guys have heard of that or not, but I just thought it was funny to see just so many references and little things just in the details.
Going back to the mom's boyfriend, Colt Bronco. His name is that's his name. He's an police officer, but he's acted by Mel Rodriguez, and that's a name that to me isn't household, but he's got a very like familiar sound to it. I'm looking through here. We've got We Bare Bears. 75 credits here. Apparently that's the lucky number to be on Onward.
Been on a lot of things. I don't know if I know many of them.
Community, he was Sergeant Nunez.
Oh.
Okay, I'm pretty sure that's the police officer that works with Senor Chang.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, that's where I recognize
he's great.
him. Yeah. I don't know how many of you have experienced parents dating, but it doesn't get any easier at any age.
Yeah. I think it's always at least awkward. Because it's just weird to think about, I guess. But parents are people too, so... Did anybody else feel like it was kind of funny that it was supposed to be ugly purple socks? I was just like, that doesn't seem that bad,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, let us know in the comments. Would you wear those purple socks? I would love those purple socks.
I don't think they looked that bad on him either. I mean, he was just legs, but way to accessorize. Oh, we felt like it looked like Burbank a bit from having been out in LA a bit. It looks, if you're around there, you can see some of the stuff is definitely based on
California.
Yeah, and I mean, Pixar's up in San Francisco, but definitely, those 19 lanes or something like that on the highway at one point certainly reminded me of some of the California highways. I'm sure you kids can relate.
That traffic.
All that driving you do. Oh, that commute, right? That none of us has right now. Anyway.
Only the most heroic of us all. So that's kind of what happens in Onward.
drawing on the hands is so high school. You've got Ian writing on his hands to remember what he's gonna do and stuff like that, and just I was like, oh man, I did that so much. I'm sure a lot of you do it now and used to do it or still do it.
Quick thing, I'm scrolling through Dan Scanlon's Twitter because there's a tweet I'm going to retweet from our Twitter account because I love it. But apparently that you can get the purple socks, so stay tuned on that.
That's perfect for what we were just talking about.
Possibly some Converse I was seeing, so I might be a little bit poorer at the end of this podcast.
I will say that those socks look uglier in real life than they did in the movie. But maybe that's just because of the Pixar magic. I think we should jump into spoilers. What do you think?
I'm ready.
If you haven't seen the movie yet,
smash that like button and come back and watch the rest of our podcast afterwards.
All right, spoilers ahoy. So, I guess should we just spoil the ending right away? I mean, talk about the ending right away?
Absolutely.
Or should we? Okay. So obviously there's a lot of emotions.
Maybe we should back up a little and say how we felt about their quest in general.
Oh yeah, well let's just talk about the whole thing and then we'll get specific. And I think this is why I said that it's kind of a combo of, both things of being very fun, but also being, pretty emotional, because it's about, losing their father and trying to be reunited with him and the tension that comes between the two brothers in that situation. But then you also have the fact that it's just this like really fun quest movie that feels a lot like, we were saying, reminiscent of the buddies of, Mike and Sully from Monsters Inc. and Monsters University. It's just a lot of fun. What are your thoughts? You have
Definitely.
Some things you want to pull out?
I felt like the director was able to test the waters of, an unlikely duo with Monsters University that came in and Onward even stronger, perhaps. It's been a little bit since I've seen Monsters University, so I certainly don't want to have to pick out which one's better, but he does a good job here dealing with the struggles to connect with someone that you're so close to, that you live with, that you see every day, and then get forced into a difficult situation with them.
Yeah. Obviously the two brothers have very different ways of looking at the world. I think they're just in who they are, they're very different. I think Barley is like a glass half full kind of guy, and Ian is like a glass half empty kind of guy. So it's like in every situation, Barley is going to see the positive and like, oh, we could do this. And then Ian is going to be like, oh, what if this happens and we die? Essentially. It felt that way a lot at certain points because they were really diametrically opposed.
I mean, Barley's over there like, there's still a few drops left in this gas can, and Ian hates driving, so like,
yeah,
it's just a bad situation. And I've been in a situation like that with, oh no, that doesn't tell you how much gas is left. And I'm definitely more of an Ian to be like, how could you do this to me, instead of having sympathy. And that's what makes you like Ian, because he's relatable. He reacts the way you would react.
Right.
But you like Barley because he's so lovable, because he comes along and it just weasels his way into your heart.
Yeah, it's kind of like Barley, he's who you want on your team. And Ian is who you feel like you are in some ways. It's like he's the audience in the movie in some ways.
Yeah.
They always they usually put a character like that into it. That's going to be people like Jim, who looks at the camera all the time in The Office, or you've got Ben Wyatt from Parks and Rec, who he was very much the relatable character when everybody's freaking about this little horse. And he's just like, I don't get it, guys. I just don't get it.
I think Ben Wyatt is actually their dad, even though that's not Adam Scott was not their dad. But I felt like that was who their dad was. He's an accountant, but he's like into like some nerdy things. See him throwing out some cones.
Oh, I love that idea, but it also makes me sad that he died. I'm sad anyway, though.
It's true. It is, man.
It really tears at your heartstrings.
How can you make me sad about a pair of pants?
Well, oh man, the ending where Ian finally does the thing that he needs to do and gets his dad back, and then he can't get there. There's nothing he can do. He's stuck in all of that debris. and it's just heartbreaking. It's heart-wrenching. It's like bittersweet because you're so happy that like Barley gets to have that moment with his dad. But it's also so sad that it's just a moment, and that it's also, in the greater scheme of things, also they still don't get their dad back forever. It feels a little bit like they're trying to, we have those moments in life where we get to kind of relive some memories or some moments with our family. And no matter how desperately we want or we try to bring them back, there's nothing you can do. And so it has that kind of feeling to it. It's like, obviously this is unrealistic. There's nothing we can do to bring them back for a moment even. But there's something real in the feelings of it where Ian's stuck there and he's like, I can glimpse them, but I can't get them back. And well, I don't know, just
Ian doesn't have memories with his dad, and he can't get them back because he never had them.
Yeah.
And that just hurts.
Oh man, yeah, that scene, I was like really getting teary-eyed because I'm sitting there just thinking about my dad and how I wish I could have him back for a moment, and just the memory of that. I can relate so much to it.
The tape recorder.
Yes, the tape recorder scene towards the beginning when Ian is trying to decide to be like his dad and be more confident because he hears from that guy in the restaurant that his dad was so confident.
Ian is thinking about, I'm a man now, because that's what's said at the beginning to him by his family. I'm a man now. What does being a man look like? My hero man is my dad. And so what was he like? And how do I be that? And so that's where his journey starts. And he can't even get breakfast properly.
Yeah.
And so he comes in with this list, this notebook.
He's writing down all the things he wants to do.
Yeah.
To be more like his dad.
Which frankly is too many things on one to-do list for one day. But he's 16. He's learning.
I appreciate big things, yeah.
I appreciate his optimism, but like, that's a hard list to tackle.
Live life together, I think, was one of them, and it's just like that's
that's his later list. So it starts out with his list for driving, to be like dad. I didn't write notes on what the other thing was, but I'm sure we'll mention it as we get through
Play catch together, laugh together.
No, that's the second list.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm glad you wrote that down.
I didn't. I just remembered it.
Oh. Well, anyway, there's a first
I've got
list.
My notes here, but they're varying levels of effective. Sometimes I was just like, there's a rock in that scene. Like.
So here's what I wrote down about after Ian goes through his very bad day and all of his notes didn't help. There's the tape recorder scene where he's sitting at his desk and he's listening to a recording that his parents had made trying to get a tape recorder to work.
Yeah.
And it feels kind of like he's got a little shrine to his dad at his desk, which Christopher noticed a few awards for math and his dad being an accountant. Like there are connections to him that he doesn't necessarily see or doesn't really feel like it because he's thinking about how inadequate he
Ian
feels.
is like his dad even though he hasn't really met him. I think about that a lot with my sister because she's so much like our mom, and our mom died when she was 2. So Grace doesn't have a lot of memories of her mom. But there are certain things she does, like her laugh or like her sense of humor, where I'm just like, oh man, she's just like mom. I think they're so clever. Man, Pixar is so clever in how they create characters and worlds because Ian definitely has a lot of like those things of like some connections with his dad, even without having really experienced him.
Right, and when you're fortunate enough to have siblings, they're going to reflect your parents and help you keep those memories alive. But at the beginning of the movie, we see, in this tape recorder scene, Ian isn't relying on that. He's trying to go to the source, and it feels to me like he's been listening to this tape a lot because he knows how to reply to get it to feel like he's having a conversation with his dad.
Yeah, he memorized it, which I can relate to also because I used to record stuff with a cassette recorder and like and I would play that stuff back and listen to it all the time, and I would watch the same movies and audio recordings over and over and over again, and I would just like memorize them. You'd memorize the order, and sometimes you start talking to it because you like know what the other character's dialogue is, so you're like acting with it, or I like the idea of like changing the response to it too, because his mom was having a conversation with his dad on the tape there.
Right. Yeah, but I felt like that scene I don't want them to get rid of the stuff before it, but that scene is like where it just hits you in the gut of this is what he's dealing with for real. It's one scene that's so impactful.
Yeah, like what a dumb kids movie, am I right? You know, like this doesn't have anything real or groundbreaking or earth shattering in it. Adults should probably just, not ever watch it.
Yeah, so I wrote some notes on what the needs are of our characters.
Yeah, sure.
So
It's good to get into the macro a little bit of like what makes this story tick.
Right. Memories of Dad is like a running thing they need to process. Barley has like 2 memories of Dad. Well, maybe it's 3. Well, maybe it's actually 4.
Yeah. And that's amazingly clever that it's like, how does this pair of legs communicate with people? It has no ears, no brain, no head, no eyes. And they have that little memory in there that Barley had of playing the da-da-da-da-da on his dad's foot.
Yes.
That is so smart. Like
Skunk in a barnyard.
I mean, how clever is that? What a great... It seems like a throwaway. Movies do this kind of thing all the time. Books do this kind of thing all the time, where they'll set something up by just mentioning, a little detail that we just think is world building. And then it turns out it's super important. And man, is this movie riddled with that stuff. Like, all through it, there are so many callbacks and so many setups and payoffs. What are some of the other things that
some of the needs, or do you want me to get into callbacks?
We'll do the needs first, and then we'll go into the callbacks.
When you're looking at a film, when you want to find the theme or the need, usually another character that's not your main character is going to say it.
That's a good point.
So for Barley, one of the things his mom yells, besides saying, "This is the world's longest gap year," is asking or challenging him to stop focusing on the past, because Barley's a character obsessed with the history of something. To stop focusing on the past and instead focus on his future.
Right. So that's what you think, that's what Barley needs to do.
That's what Barley needs to do. And it actually works out really well because he doesn't have to give up who he is and what he likes.
Right.
But he needs to incorporate that into the future so that he can connect better with his family.
Yeah. So there's this idea that Barley's stuck.
Because he had to deal with the past. He had to deal with the loss of his father and his regret for not getting to say goodbye.
Right.
And for Ian, he needs to respond to Barley's request for him to trust him.
Yeah.
He's so focused on being like Dad that he's neglecting his future as well.
Right.
So that's what I saw in it.
Yeah. Yeah, and then, you look at Ian, they like to do this thing at the beginning of movies where it's kind of, I think they call it the laundry list sometimes. It's the list of things that they need to fix. So often you'll show a character at the beginning of a movie before anything starts, before the call to adventure, as they call it. And you'll have all the things that like they're struggling with, they're weak at, they're not able to do, or they keep messing up on. You'll get a few examples of that. And so those are the things throughout the rest of the movie that they need to confront or fix in order to achieve. And so I can think of a few off the top of my head real quickly. Do you have some too? I mean, obviously, Ian has a severe lack of confidence, and he can't even ask these guys who we're not even sure if they're quite his friends to come to his birthday, which he then says is, sorry, my birthday is canceled.
And then walks into a pool. Yeah, and he picked... Man, I don't think his friends could have been nicer.
Oh, man. They're so sweet. Like, they give him so many chances.
I think they would have ridden in that van. They would have gotten into a van with strangers, which is a bad idea typically. But again, we got to give some trust to Barley.
They do know Ian, though. They don't know Barley. So if Ian introduces them, then it's fine. There's also, Ian has a hard time getting along with Barley at the beginning. And it's clear that Barley is just trying to help Ian. I mean, look how much he loves him. He drives to his high school. He shows up. He's like trying to pull out all the stops and just like celebrate Ian. And Ian is embarrassed and feels really... He already felt awkward, but he just can't let his brother be his brother and be there for him because Ian is so insecure and doesn't trust him enough. And trust, right? We were saying...
Yeah.
It's the central theme of this movie, I think. Ian specifically needs to trust Barley.
Yeah, and I would say my suggestion, if you had to put the theme into a sentence, would be that honesty is a foundation for trust. As they become honest with each other through the road trip or quest, then they're able to trust each other, even when some of their ideas seem really crazy, like a gelatinous cube.
Yeah, the gelatinous cube is funny. It's actually in the credits of the movie that was lent to Pixar by Magic, I think, Magic the Gathering. And so it's pretty funny. They reference that a lot. And then that's, of course, one of our callbacks, if you want to talk about the callbacks.
Yeah, so I'm going to run through a list, and Christopher, keep tabs on any ones that you want to kind of go into more.
Sure.
There's the aerobics. Mom knows how to let out her inner warrior. We see that coming back in the actual fight at the end.
And she says, "I am a mighty warrior." And then at the end, she says that again.
Yeah.
Which I was just like, oh, man. She's great. She's so great.
We've got Barley chained to the fountain that reappears at the end.
Oh, yeah.
Where he's yelling about ancient warriors and quests.
Yes.
We have Ian making lists, which he ends up making kind of 3 lists. He repurposes his dad checklist to be like, I've already had this. This is what I achieved on my quest with Barley.
He definitely reminds you a bit of the worrywart Dipper Pines from Gravity Falls, because he's also a list maker, and he'll live or die by his list. So
number 9, sister.
Step 9.
The dragon mural comes back in a hilarious character design way.
Oh yeah.
We already talked about the toe drumming.
Yeah, the dragon mascot of the school ends up being the face of the debris dragon.
I, for one, welcome my Figment green overlord.
Man, that end villain is so much more intimidating because of the fact that you touch any part of him and you're going to come away with a scrape, you know?
And then a tetanus shot.
Oh, gosh. That thing was dangerous. Like, I mean, dragons are dangerous, don't get me wrong, but, like, at least I only have to worry about their face. I mean, maybe their tail, but...
yeah.
I don't want to get stepped on either.
I'm not really taking any chances with dragons. Air conditioning, gelatinous cube, their cult impressions for
yeah, that comes back multiple times.
Yeah, you need to work on that. Splinters, either the tail light or turn signal from the van.
Yep.
Unicorns. The scene in the cave when the unicorns come back.
Yes.
It reminds me of the Disney Mickey Mouse short, the currently running Mickey Mouse short, where they have the rainbow caverns and Minnie Mouse is following Mickey from this map that's a very questionable map for navigation, and he's telling her to believe how great this is, but it smells terrible, and there's like
rats with disease,
rats with plague.
Yes.
And Minnie's like, I don't believe.
And they both gasp. It's so good. Do you have the air conditioning being too strong? Because he turns on the air conditioning the first time, and they're literally like being blown away like it's a movie set fan. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And they bring that back to take care of, what are they, pixies? Fairies?
I think they're pixies.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And on Pixar's website, they actually said that Barley rebuilt his van without a manual or anything.
Wow.
Which, like...
That's really impressive.
Yeah.
That's something I love about this movie too, is they build up at the beginning. He's so sweet and kind and just kind of a goofball. So Barley is really easily underestimated. And Ian clearly doesn't think he's as smart as he is. But the thing is, and you know, even the cops are at one point talking about how they think Barley's a screw up. It's so sad because, and I love that the movie gives him this treatment, because in the end, he's shown to be right about literally everything. This whole movie would have gone so much differently and so much better. I mean, it would have lasted 20 minutes and it wouldn't have been very, you know, you wouldn't have been worried at all if Ian had just followed everything that Barley says in the whole movie, because he's right about literally everything, and he really is smart. He has so much knowledge about a lot of things, right. Not just his nerdy things.
He doesn't even bring his cards with him.
Yeah.
He just brings the spell book to help his brother, but he knows all of this stuff.
He draws that in the sand at the point where they have the gas, I think. Or no, that's when they get pulled over. He draws in in the dirt on the side of the road.
Yes, to explain the spell they need to impersonate their not quite stepdad.
And he's doing this, he's reciting it all from memory. I mean, that's a brilliant mind. His intelligence looks different than other people's. And despite all his worry, Ian doesn't know nearly as much as he assumes he does. And all of his fears are kind of way bigger than reality. In fact, they aren't true. Which I don't know about you guys, but often what I worry about is way worse than anything that ever actually happens. So I think it's a great lesson. Fear is just a big theme here, and Ian has to overcome that. We're looking at the character design and visual development art for this movie, and it's on Pixar's website, pixar.com/onward. And man, it's beautiful. I mean, they definitely have enough for an art book here. I'm sure there already is one.
Oh yeah, we'll have to scope that out as well. Love this mushroom town.
Yeah, I love that they live in the Mushroom Kingdom. Do you think they fix plumbing? Oh man, the pawn shop lady is gross. And when Corey stabs her in the neck, it is shocking and hilarious.
She's like, I am not a bear snake lady. I'm a lion scorpion lady. Stab.
Let's talk about them because we need to give Corey and what's the mom's name again?
Laurel.
Laurel their
Give her
due.
her laurels. No, he's sitting on her laurels. Anyway.
They're so good, right?
I love the juxtaposition of their journey with the brothers' journey because Corey is kind of a mixture of the two brothers. She's so much trouble.
Yes.
And has a lot of knowledge and has a lot of fear.
And she's kind of crazy.
Yeah, just
a little bit crazy at points.
Yeah, I feel like
she's
Laurel,
on all those energy drinks.
Laurel was onto something with her being a little crazy, but maybe not from that scratch on her foot.
Yeah, but she's so likable too, though, Corey. She's really sweet, and she's like, "Oh, okay, wherever you go, I'm supporting you," to the mom. And
but I'm gonna talk about myself for too long and get sidetracked.
Because Laurel's actually like in great fear, but Corey is kind of like getting her life back in a way. I wrote down that scene in the tavern / Chuck E. Cheese. It's this great character arc in like 1 minute or 2 minutes of Corey going from this like really astute, overworked, a little bit stressed manager to suddenly becoming this mad woman who's going to take her life back if it kills her. And it's really great. It's great character development. I mean, you like this Manticore very quickly.
Yeah, 2 things about the tavern that I loved, even though for Corey they weren't very good. The Manticore mascot.
Yeah, the dancing around, running to them.
That man has no self-preservation. He should have known that backlash was going to come. I mean, that must have been years of repressed anger for Corey. And he's behind her, imitating her, trying to put on a show.
Yes.
But I liked how goofy he was. He was really, cheesy.
I wanted to point something out, too, at the beginning of that scene. There's like a storyboard thing. It's something I have to pay attention to as a storyboard artist, but it's something that they do in film, is they guide your eyes. Films are always doing this with lots of points of perspective, like if a house and all these fences and things are like the line, they point you to where your eye will go because your eye naturally follows lines and things. But specifically in film, they try to keep the action in a similar place by having your eyes look at where the character is, and then when they cut to the next shot, the new action is going to be in that same spot on the frame to wherever the character was in the last shot. So an example of this, because this is a podcast and you can't see what I'm talking about in real life, but from the movie, it's very obvious when they do that. I don't think it's a fade cut, but there's that point where they show the mom getting worried. Laurel gets worried about the fact that the Manticore, she's like, they're going on a quest. They're going to go find the Manticore. And then you see the Manticore on the table from his playset, from Barley's playset of all those action figures. And you see this plastic Manticore. and its eyes light up, and then suddenly it's the van, and it cuts to this shot of the boys, Barley and Ian, riding in Guinevere. And so they've guided your eyes directly to where the action is, and then they do that with every shot. It's almost always, if you look at it, where a character walks to in frame or where something's moving, when it cuts to the next shot, that's where the action's going to be again, the thing that you're supposed to be looking at. That way you don't like jump to a new shot and then suddenly you're like, oh, whoa, what am I supposed to be looking at? And you don't really notice it because you're not supposed to. You're supposed to just naturally be able to follow the action.
Right, and that starts in the storyboards and it continues all the way through the editing because, I mean, scenes get rearranged and they have to make it work, and they make it work in this movie for sure.
Yeah, so I thought that was just a cool little moment where I was like, I can point out this thing for you guys if you want to know a little bit behind the scenes.
Absolutely, and I also really like both versions of the tavern. I would love to see a tavern at Disney World or Disneyland. Just put it at the end of Pixar Pier.
That looks like this, yeah.
Yeah.
Or like also like a real medieval one too. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the one at the end. Either way, as long as someone lights some birthday candles.
What do you think about the kids? They're filling out those little play sheets. And what was the girl who'd done it for them?
Props to Kayla.
Little Kayla who'd filled it out for them.
Ravens Point Kayla. Yeah, we're going to have to look in to see who Kayla is, because I feel like that wasn't a random name.
I also love that at the end of that scene when the whole tavern's on fire and it looks like about as medieval and fantasy as you can get. I mean, it's like Lord of the Rings. And then suddenly it smash cuts to the realistic, like, real-life fire engines flying down the road to this fire. And it's just like, whoa, what kind of movie am I in? Like, one minute I think it's, Lord of the Rings, and the next second it's, like, Cops or something, or CSI.
Yes. The clear path is rarely the right one.
Oh, yeah, and that's a callback for sure. That's obviously something Barley says, and then Ian says it at the end, and,
Yeah. Oh, one thing that I wanted to point out about the beginning and the end is that Barley's the one narrating at the beginning and teaches about the world, and by the end we have Ian narrating to show that show a connection. I mean, it'd be annoying if they were saying in unison because that'd be kind of creepy.
So the apprentice becomes the master, I think Barley says.
Yes, he does. Man, I feel like they hint at Barley being a good surrogate dad because of all of his dad jokes. He just he can't stop. He can't stop telling his dad's legs these jokes because he's been saving them all up.
Well, and what you're talking about too, about that opening scene versus the ending scene. In a movie, in the writing, they call it the opening image and they call it the closing image. And very often, almost in every movie, you guys can look for it. Watch the opening of the movie and then watch the ending. And very often, they're almost shot for shot the exact same thing. But how has everything changed? And they'll literally walk you through all of the things, maybe even in order, that they introduced at the beginning. But then now how they've changed. So in the beginning, it shows how like all the magic is gone and it's really nostalgic. And throughout the movie, there's this great like slow movement of like them getting further and further away from technology and modern to more fantasy. And it gets less and less populated and they're going into more and more fantastic scenes and medieval areas. And so that's very clearly a progression there. But if you look at it at the end, it's like all the things that Barley and Ian needed to fix, like Guinevere, they get a new Guinevere 2. Ian's now giving a presentation at the beginning of class and he can talk to everybody, those friends without any problem, and he saves everybody. He rebuilds the school. It's like literally a checklist of all these things. They're getting along with the boyfriend of their mom now and making the joke with him.
Her main man.
Oh man, I forgot about that.
M-A-N-E. That's on Laurel's phone. Its main man is calling.
And he finally lets his hair down.
Lets his mane out. With his "I was born to run." Oh man! But if he'd been able to run those 70 miles an hour, the kids couldn't have possibly gotten away from him.
That's true. That's a good point. What else were you going to point out there? I think you had something else.
Oh, well, I really liked Barley's enthusiasm for magic.
Oh, yeah.
I would say that I think Ian was good under pressure, but he always lacked the confidence, and Barley was always ready to have confidence in him and in himself. And that was so necessary to the quest. Not just his knowledge, but his support. And it's visually seen with the trust bridge and the rope. And
Yes.
because Barley, at the beginning, he's like, he doesn't even need the rope. You don't need the rope. You've got this.
Right.
And then he's still nervous when the rope is gone. And I don't think it's because he doesn't believe his brother's got it, but he does know that the rope... I think if he doesn't know, he suspects that the rope is a better comfort than his brother's faith at that point, even.
Yeah, well, and to me, I take that scene, that shot, as being, look how much he loves his brother. He cares so much about him. And it's like, no matter how much you guys, bug each other, you and your siblings, you truly do care about each other so much. And I think Ian is getting so overcome and so focused on all of the fears and the worries in this movie that he forgets about how good his brother is, which is why it's so sweet and impactful at the end when he finally realizes, my brother's been there for me all this time. I've had a dad, essentially. Obviously we can't replace any person or any relationship, but I think relationships are what get us through the loss of relationships. It's friends and family who've helped me through the hard times I've had with losing my family. I think that's, top thing you should do, guys. If you're missing somebody or you've lost somebody, surround yourself with good people who really love you. And fortunately, Ian has that in Barley.
Yeah, a lot of people aren't lucky enough to have family that can help them through it, but it's really cool to see how the brothers work. And I do believe that Dan Scanlon has a brother, so you can really see his and his brother's relationship there. And I hope it's not idealized, but it's actually from experience of getting over their loss, because I know it was a very personal project to him, and that's a very personal project to us because I've also lost actually two fathers. So it's rough not being able to buy as many tissues as I'd like right now, but at home I can ugly cry if I need to.
It's sad and true. Well, the other thing I love about that scene, as I was watching it, the rope falls off and Ian's out there and Barley's just rooting him on but really worried, and Ian's over there and he's like, you still got me, right? And he's like, yeah. And I was just thinking about how much that scene mirrors a father trying to teach their son how to ride a bike.
Oh yes, Mirai, when they're watching.
Oh yeah.
So in the Japanese film that came out a couple of years ago,
it's called Mirai, or Mirai of the Future.
Yes.
I think in Japan it's just called Mirai.
Mirai no Mirai. Anyway.
Oh, Mirai no Mirai.
Anyway,
Mirai means future in Japanese.
And it's the name of a sister, but and that's a fascinating film, and I don't want to take up too much time talking about it, but it's also about sibling dynamics and parent dynamics and learning to ride a bike. And so that's definitely, when you're talking about that, I'm seeing Kun, the brother, learning to ride a bike and being such a baby about it, but also he seemed very young to be learning to ride a bike. So I'm glad that Ian and Barley were past bikes and working on, magic.
I mean, that is absolutely a callback to a father-son relationship of, because it's almost always a dad teaching his son to ride a bike, or, I think they play catch at a point, and he remembers that at the end too. And that is that is the most stereotypical father-son thing, right? And, what's a kid going to be? You've got me, right? And he's like, yeah, I've got you. I've got you. I'm holding on to your bike while you're trying to learn how to pedal. And that's immediately what I thought of this time when I was watching it. I was just like, yeah. And then at the end, they actually show Barley in Ian's memories it's little Barley teaching little Ian how to ride a really little bicycle.
Yeah, that's a good catch.
Yeah, and pushing him off of a diving board, which also is very sibling-like.
So Barley, one thing I liked, and we actually rewound the movie a little bit to try to see if there was more than two, but there were two mixtapes that I noticed. One was Quest Mix.
Yes.
And one was Rise to Valhalla.
Nice.
And that was in another very emotional scene where we say goodbye to Guinevere.
What are your favorite things about that van? Because I think we need to talk about all the things of the van because it's so good.
Favorite things about the van? I like the paint job. I think I already mentioned that.
Yeah. I like the wood inside. It feels like it's a ship. you know, like it's a Viking ship or something like that, you know, a medieval kind of thing too, fantasy, with all the boards and
Yeah.
everything inside, and there's like a coat of arms in there, and it's so funny.
I like, and usually I'm not a huge fan of the show or movie saying its name, but I liked that he put Onward
Yes.
for his drive.
Yes. Thank you for pointing that one out because that was so great.
Yes.
Put it in O for Onward. Because I would have read that as 0 next to the 1, 2 also.
1, 2,
you know?
0. It's countdown to liftoff.
I love the send off because you've got that, like, you know, super over the top music as they're sending the van to go run into the, you know, the cliff, so it makes the rocks fall and keeps the police officers from being able to catch them. And as it's running, it's playing this majestic, you know, fantasy music, and it's kind of electronic and stuff like that. But then the tire pops and it starts galloping, and it sounds like a galloping horse.
Call it Fantasy Van Halen.
Yes, a lot of overlap there. But yeah, it sounds like it's galloping because the tire pops, and then it jumps into the air, and there's a close-up of the side of the van of the Pegasus, you know, on Guinevere, which I think is what Guinevere is supposed to be, a Pegasus. And it's like flying through the air, and it like glints in the sun, and it has its moment of like it's taken off and it's spreading its wings, and it's just so good. I mean, like, and then, you know, of course it just destroys itself, but it's also, you know, there's always like that hero in a fantasy movie that sacrifices themselves for the heroes to be able to continue on, like right. Gandalf
and so at that point Barley gives up his second most important thing, because I'd say family's number one.
Yeah.
But he gives up his van, and I think that
what a sacrifice.
That empowers Ian to give up his FaceTime with Dad.
Yeah.
Because
that's a good point. I didn't even think about the give and take there.
Barley gives up almost everything for their dad, but it's for Ian too. And I'm really happy that Ian doesn't let him make that sacrifice a second time.
Yeah.
To not get to say goodbye.
You know, another visual storytelling thing that I thought was interesting in this movie is it's sort of backwards a little bit. Typically in a movie, you know, you start out bright and happy, and then things stay pretty bright and happy through the middle, and then it gets really dark when there's what we call the all is lost moment. It's like, you know, basically everything you thought you were going to be able to achieve fails. You know, you lose everything. Rapunzel entangled is back in the tower, and she's lost Flynn. Yeah, sorry. There are so many Finns, you know. I mean, any movie where you think about the point where basically everything was going well and then they lost everything. I'm trying to think of a few. But that's the all is lost moment.
And a lot of them do end up going on a quest and ending up back where you started.
Yes. Yeah.
But worse.
Right, yeah. Things end up being worse than when you started. I think in Scott Pilgrim, it's when he dies and then he gets a second chance. You know, basically, usually, when you get into the big fight scenes and when things are getting harder and harder and you have what they call the all's lost moment, that's when things start to get really dark in the shots. The backgrounds are dark, the colors are dark, the lighting is lower. But in this movie, they start out kind of at night. They get stuck when the gas runs out, and then a lot of the first half of the movie is them traveling at night and trying to find their way. And so then suddenly they're out in these big blazing beautiful vistas in the fields and out in the country and the nature, and so it kind of gets brighter towards the end. But then there's also, so that's a little bit of a reverse. Obviously there are some different points where it gets darker again, you know, because they're in like the underground and things like that,
the cave.
But that's
a pretty warm experience for most of their cave trip.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because when they're on the cheese curl, I never know what to call those. There's so many different kinds. They've got that really warm light because he's got like a torch going, and then they're shooting off fireworks that fall up, and it's really cool. The lights and colors there are really neat. But there's a lot of color design too. That's another thing they like to do visually. You know, you were noticing that when Ian.
So after Ian starts to turn back into himself while disguising himself as Colt,
the centaur,
then he and Barley are not on good terms anymore, and it's immediately just dark and quiet and
So much darker than any other scene, I think.
tense.
Yeah, that might be the darkest scene in the movie.
I think so.
It's basically just interior lights from like the dashboard of the van on their faces.
Yeah, I think animators were probably hoping it'd make it a little bit more dark so they didn't have to do anything for that scene.
It's a lot of work to animate, let me tell you. But also, when they get out of the van after that, Barley runs to this vending machine angrily, and he's eating those cheese curls, and he's bathed in red light as he's super angry. And I think most people would associate the color red with anger, and he's certainly... I think that's maybe the only scene Barley's almost anything other than happy, because he's so positive, and Barley is so angry right there, and he's just bathed in this red light from the vending machine. And that really stood out to me, because it's like a little bit of a color cue telling you how they're feeling. And of course,
Yeah.
Ian's bathed in red there too.
Ian's like, Dad's in the van and he's all scared. He doesn't know what's going on. And they turn around and he's dancing.
Oh, that is such a funny shot to look back and see. We were talking about how funny it is the way they use the top half of the character for the dad.
Yes, and how funny it is that people keep being horrified when he doesn't have a top half. They're like, ugh.
Oh man, or the way it gets knocked off so many times in funny ways.
Yes, or shocking ways. There's
Yes.
that one that was like, oh, wait, that's okay.
Yeah, when the traps go off in that cave, in the, I don't know, the vault.
The gauntlet.
The gauntlet, yes. Gotta stick to our medieval and fantasy terms here.
Yes.
We might want to wrap up kind of soon. Is there a few more things we want to talk about?
I was just gonna say,
overall?
I really liked the dancing scene and thought it did a great job.
It's fun. They're together.
It breaks the tension enough to make them be honest with each other, and that's when progress really happens. And that's kind of what parents should be there for, what a mentor would be there for, because I don't want to assume that everyone has good parents. But when you have a parent that can help you work through it, you know, sometimes it's not like, let's sit down or let's make them wear a get along shirt. Sometimes it's like, we're going to change the subject and give you guys some freedom to not feel so tense while you're trying to work through something. So it's cool to see their dad being able to just, and he doesn't even know what's going on. He's just like, music is loud. Guess I'll dance.
Yeah. Yeah, they do these little throwaways to kind of explain the logic of how a pair of legs could be aware of what's going on enough to like do the right thing at the right time. And that's one of the ones where they're like, oh, maybe he can feel the vibrations from the music, you know, and he's dancing. And so that's really funny. And there are a couple of things I noticed. This is a different point, but I noticed a few things that seemed like references to me, especially in the sky in the background as they're in those fields when they're in more of the wild areas. They're following the crows and stuff like that. One of the mountains has like a twin peak, and to me, it looked a lot like the Eye of Sauron from Lord of the Rings, or maybe Mount Doom or something like that. But then there are these other cliffs that really looked like Pride Rock to me, and then it was kind of repeated like 6 times or something like that. And so they're like a row of Pride Rocks from from the Lion King.
It's a whole pride of rocks.
Nice.
Yeah, let's kind of do a closing thoughts.
Okay, yeah. So another couple of things that I just really loved, like the Manticore Corey, she's talking to the police at the one point, and she's like, last name, you know, Manticore, first name, the. It's just like, she almost doesn't know how to answer. What are a few of the jokes that stuck out to you? Because I think the jokes in this are pretty good. They're a little bit subtler. I like how they actually make us laugh at the, are you working hard or hardly working?
It's like, I don't like that they made me laugh at that. I don't want to laugh at that.
I love that there's Guinevere too, and that Ian paints it for Barley.
Yes.
Like, how sweet is that? I love seeing the change in Ian and how he finally values Barley, because Barley is so good. Barley is so valuable in this movie, and I think, you know, a big problem that Ian has is not valuing that relationship. It's like you can get caught on relationships you've lost, and you can forget the great ones you have.
Yeah, especially when they leave all their toys all over the house and you step on them. Which is, I guess, our problem with our dog.
That's true. He likes to leave them everywhere, and for some reason you never see them until you're tripping over them.
Yeah, so I feel like I can relate to the Lightfoot family. Burgershire. I'm glad we got burgers today because I was very jealous of his takeout breakfast. But yeah, what I wanted to say about the film is that I really appreciated how neat everything was.
Yeah.
In the process. And sometimes maybe doesn't appeal to you in a film, but it kind of sets up here are all the spells that might be learned. It hints at them in the beginning without giving their hand away. It just kind of sets up what's going to happen. When I saw Tangled, I saw it in theaters twice, and I missed the beginning both times because theaters were a little bit far from my house and I didn't plan my time well. And so I got the DVD and was shocked that there was an intro scene that explained all the things. I didn't know that Rapunzel was the lost princess. And that really changed my experience of watching the film the first time. And so
more of a reveal.
It also was a little confusing because I didn't know anything about the flower. So I see why they put the intro in there. But I think knowing what I know about Tangled, looking at Onward, I don't mind that they show what's going to come, what could change, because it's really more of setting us up to be in the mind of Barley, which is again why he narrates at the beginning, of what the world could be, seeing the world as it could be instead of as what it is.
Right. And in the end, Ian gains that perspective, and he's way better for it. Instead of seeing everything as potentially dangerous or terrible, or seeing himself as terrible, he finally starts to see his own value, see his brother's value, see the potential in the world and the positives and the ways that he can move forward, move onward, if you will. And rather than just being completely controlled by his past and his circumstances, which he couldn't do anything about. It's true that you can't do anything about the circumstances you're born into or that are around you, but like Barley notices and realizes, you can do something about it moving forward. That's super encouraging and inspiring to me, and it is a way that I've had to learn as I've grown up, having experienced loss and things, that I've had to learn how to live my life too, because you gotta keep moving forward, as Disney said.
Yeah.
Well, I've been thinking a little bit too. There are a couple of other things that they show visually at the end, just to, now the pixies are flying. Now Ian's got confidence. He's more positive. They're getting along with Mom's boyfriend. He quotes back what Barley said about how Barley says, we said this before, but he says the most obvious way is seldom the right way, and they're the right path. And he makes the van fly. He's like really mastered magic now. And it's really cool too, because the meta story of the magic all being gone, they're fixing the world too. They're bringing the magic back to the world. And that's really cool.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. And using the splinter was really clever. I was like, oh man, how's he going to get out of this situation when he loses the magic staff? It goes flying out in the ocean, and then he's like, use whatever you have, you have to use whatever you've got at your disposal or whatever, which is such a great part of the theme too, of like, you got to move forward and you got to do what you can with what you've got. Value what you have. You have some things that you can use. And Ian really takes that to heart from what Barley said earlier about the cheese girl. And he uses a splinter. I mean, if you look at him and you look at that situation, just as a viewer watching the movie, I was just like, what is he going to do? There's nothing. He's lost everything. There's no hope. And then he finds a splinter and uses it, which is another great callback. Like you were saying, there's a lot of boomeranging in this movie of like, there are like all these little arcs inside of the bigger whole.
Absolutely. And you don't have to sand down a splinter because it's only got like 3 fibers or something.
Just wear gloves, I guess.
Oh, so what I was going to say earlier, another aspect of the way this film is told includes a road trip being, it's a convention for when you're in a different setting, you're able to have a different experience with the people that you see regularly.
True.
or that you usually wouldn't interact with, but I would say it's the first for this film. But that is magnified out to the viewer because since this is a fantasy story, we're able to experience and find words for things that go on in our lives now through the lens of this film. And that's something that I think Pixar continues to do well, and Disney as a whole as well, of I'm able to talk about difficult things through the lens of these films to explain a concept or to relate to a feeling. And that's why I have so much joy in watching in visual storytelling.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think they recognize that feelings, and I mean, it's like life and the human condition, those kind of things. These things are universal. Like, we all deal with this stuff, and like, I love that Pixar talks to a wide range of audience. I think Pixar are true family films. It's not just for kids. It's not just for adults. People still think sometimes, and I think this is changing, and I'm so glad that, it's animated, that's for children. Well, all of the good family films are now animated, pretty much. The live action films that were for families, they've become fewer and fewer. I hope those are making a bit of a comeback too. You pretty much don't have an option if you have to have an all ages film these days if it isn't animated.
There's been a few. There was the John Cena film about firefighters.
Oh yeah, true. Yeah, so maybe it's coming back, but I guess my point is that Pixar does it so well, and they point out some things that are universal, and it doesn't matter how old or young you are. And that's great. I love that I can share this with anyone and not be worried about it. And I also love that it's, I think, so deep and teaches some real truth to you. So, I don't know. I think this movie is really fun, and I definitely recommend it.
Absolutely. So next time when you're looking for something to be able to feel some feelings, deal with some grief, and have a lot of laughs, we really recommend checking out Onward. And if you've already seen it, watch it again.
Well, yeah, I mean, I hope that most of you have seen it, because we're talking about all the spoilers, and I'm glad you could watch it with us. And maybe we'll give you some advance notice for the next one, like what we're going to be doing or what we're going to be watching. We're thinking about watching the new Emma, right?
Yes, the new Emma is next. So like and subscribe to keep up with what we're talking about next.
Yeah, because we'd really like to watch that with you guys too and have lots of conversations on Twitter and YouTube. Go ahead and comment on the videos and we'll try to chime in there and hear what you guys liked. We're having a one-way conversation with you right now, but we're glad you're here. But yeah, come back next time. Hopefully it'll be Emma next because that's streaming now. We'll probably be doing more animation, we'll be doing some books. There's a lot of things that we want to go into. We'll probably do some more live streams so that we can maybe actually watch something together for real. You'll turn it on your TV and we'll turn it on ours, and we'll be streaming together so that, no copyright things take us down. We're so glad you've been here with us. Any closing thoughts from you?
Nope, thanks, and have a good night.
Yeah, we'll do this again soon.